Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest David Meshoulam. David is the co-founder and executive director of Tree Boston, a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating a healthier, more equitable, and climate-resilient Greater Boston by expanding and caring for the region's urban canopy. Through tree planting, environmental education, youth leadership programs, volunteer engagement, and partnerships across Greater Boston, Tree Boston has demonstrated how caring for trees can also mean caring for people. Let's start by meeting David and then learning all about Tree Boston. Welcome. So delighted to be able to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a joy to be here. Thanks for the
You
time.
know, it's been fascinating beginning to learn about Tree Boston. Eager to hear much more and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right into that, David, I think it would be of interest if you'd briefly share a little bit more about your background and then
Yeah.
perhaps how Tree Boston came about and your current position.
Yeah. Well, thank you. There's many stories I could tell, and I'll try to be brief on this because there's lots more to talk about. So, I grew up in Cambridge, and my parents always tell stories about when I was little, walking around the block sometimes used to take hours because I stop at every leaf and examine it. So I've always loved being outdoors and thinking about and connecting with nature. And did my undergrad, did my grad, and was really focused in on thinking about how people think about the world around them. And I did that from a very academic perspective of history and philosophy of science and thinking about what it means to create knowledge and create understanding and share it and all that. And then I returned to teaching, and I taught actually at Newton for a couple of years.
Hmm.
Um, and I felt like I wanted something new in my life. It was midlife crisis, if you would. And I ended up just returning to those roots of being a kid and thinking that I wanted to be outside with people doing not only community building work, but also the awesome work of just taking nature for all its awesomeness,
Hmm.
but also thinking about climate change and issues around justice and equity. And out of that imagining around 2016, 2017, I was doing a lot of networking and ended up realizing that urban forestry was really what I wanted to do. And out of that, I think I just got really lucky that that seed sprouted into something now that's an organization with, 10, 11, 12 employees, a
Hmm.
strong summer program and really joyful, important, what I think is important work.
How has Tree Boston and your involvement in this not new anymore pursuit evolved over the years?
I think I didn't set off to found a nonprofit, but when I did, w- the second year after we got founded was COVID. And I was sure that we wouldn't make it through the summer.
Hmm.
We had almost no money. Our programs all had to be put on pause. And for a variety of reasons, one of them being we got these federal loans, but I think the more important reason is that people had to slow down in their lives. They were homebound. When they could go out, it was only to open spaces. And people started noticing the trees around them. They started noticing the trees that were blooming or the birds, right? And I think even equally important is we as a society started to notice that some people didn't have trees around them, that they couldn't leave their homes and enjoy the all the benefits that trees give. And that correlated a lot with morbidity due to COVID. So these communities that lack trees also have high levels of asthma, also have high levels of other sort of pressures or disadvantages that just made COVID more prevalent. And when you combine the environmental inequities with the public health inequities, with the economic inequities, with the political moment, I think trees all of a sudden like became part of the public conversation. And that happened not only in Boston under, the mayors, the three mayors that we've been around have all been committed to trees, but
Mm.
also at the federal level under Biden. And that really, and now we're seeing it at the state level too, really galvanized people and made what was in my mind a small idea, like actually like we sort of like got on the coattails of a movement and we were I see it a lot now. I see it a lot and I know Newton has a very active Newton Tree Conservancy, but we've seen a lot of volunteer organizations in Medford and Quincy and these other towns all of a sudden emerge in the past 5 or 10 years. And it's really exciting because people are recognizing the value and the importance of trees in the places where we as humans live.
No, it's something that I hadn't given much thought of until recent history, but the concept of tree equity is
Yeah.
striking when you come in contact with some of the figures and the turnout from the lack of trees in different neighborhoods, some of the things you cited with mortality and other health conditions. It's striking. It's striking. Could you share a little bit about the involvement with volunteers? Because that seems to be such a big part of Tree Boston.
Yeah, I believe firmly that we all have relationships with trees in our lives, right? We all, in some sense, have a tree story to share. But I think B, more importantly, is I want everyone to be able to express those feelings in a way that's meaningful to them and build relationships. And for a lot of people, that makes sense, right? And so we see a real desire to do this work from volunteers. They help with plantings, they help at events. Um, we do a lot of our work by training people on how to do the work too. So that's really like when you do this kind of work that's citywide, you can't expect a city government or a small nonprofit like ours to do all the follow-up
Mhm.
work, right? A commitment on this scale needs to be distributed across everyone who's able to help. And there are lots of ways to help, whether it's watering a tree, whether it's calling on neighbors to plant a tree and share with them resources, because the only way that we're going to make a substantial difference in Boston's tree canopy is if it's an all hands on deck, or I should say, all
Mhm.
hands in the dirt sort of effort.
Very true, very true. You know, you mentioned the education aspect, which is central to Tree Boston's work. What are some of your favorite education programs for schools, young people, perhaps other areas you're involved with?
Yeah, so I I was an educator for 15, 20 years before I started this, and firmly believe in the power of education um, to make engaged, informed citizens, and to strengthen our democracy. And the first program we ran in 2019 was our Teen Urban Tree Corps program, and it grew
Mm.
out of my passion for working with high school students. Um, and that's still actually the program just started on Monday. We have 25
Ah,
youth supported by 5 team leaders, and we have a lot of returning young people. And that's my favorite program. Like just to have those teens for 7 weeks, 5, 6 hours a day, they're out, they're
wow.
learning, they're getting their hands dirty, they're doing important work, they're talking to neighbors, they're the ambassadors for the future, right? And they're the ones who are we're going to need all these people as we plant these trees to understand how to care for them. It's like I said, an all hands on deck thing. So we do that, and then we also do some visits at schools. We'll plant trees at schools. We'll do some education work at schools. That can be challenging with, how many layers of bureaucracy a lot of schools have in the school system, but it's really rewarding. And I know there are quite a few teachers who have really taken advantage of the curriculum we've provided and really worked with it, the various tools we have on our website.
Looking back, are there neighborhoods or projects that stand out as milestones in Tree Boston's history?
There are a couple. I think one of the big places we've been doing a lot of work is in Mattapan, Dorchester at Harambe Park, which I had
Mm.
never known about till I started this organization. And it's a beautiful park, one of the largest public parks in Boston, um, and um, hasn't received the same love that a park like the Boston Common might have. The city recently renovated it. It's looking really magnificent. But one of the things it lacks is a tree canopy. So we planted, I'd say 60 to 80 trees there over the past couple of years,
Wow.
all along the pathways, and I just can't wait for the next 15 or 20 years to see those trees grow in. Um, that and then we planted at a church last year. That was a really beautiful sort of work right in the heart of Roxbury, First Parish Church, planted at Lesh Park, which has been sort of a right near our office, has been a sort of an anchor space for us to work in and get to
Mm.
know some of the neighbors. I could go on and on, but those are probably my top three.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions people seem to have about urban forestry?
Hmm, that was a great question. Goodness, I haven't given that much thought. I think maybe the biggest misconception is that people don't have a conception of it,
Right.
right?
I think
Like,
that,
I don't think people think about it enough,
no.
and they only think about it when crisis happens. That's to say, crisis. I mean, when a limb falls, right? Or when your sewer gets blocked, or when you have to rake the leaves in the fall. But I think we think of trees, if we think of them at all, in the background, right? Or we don't see them, right? There's something called tree blindness. So I wish people had more misconceptions. I think the people who get it. But I think a lot of people, and I don't blame them for this, right? They have busy lives. They're out working, or they're raising a family, or they're balancing their books, or whatever it is, right? It is sort of a privilege, and it shouldn't be, right? But it is a privilege to take the time and money to plant and care for a tree. And we want to change that. We want it. We think it's a right to have a tree. It's a part of ensuring that you have a healthy, fulfilling, vital life. It's going to clean your air. It's going to cool your house. It's going to make you closer to your neighbors. It's going to make you feel connected. It's going to calm your nerves, right? There's no reason why everyone shouldn't be able to enjoy that, no matter their zip code.
No, I think the reason we haven't thought about it much gets back to what you covered earlier, is the notion of tree equity. Until
Yeah.
some of those conditions have been brought to the forefront for many of us in the last 10 years, say, uh,
Yeah.
it is something we just take for granted or have taken for granted, not as much now, thanks to efforts like yours and others. So I think
But yeah, and that term tree equity actually didn't exist existed around 10 years ago. And the organization that was then recently we changed our name was then called Speak for the Trees
Mm.
in 2018. We worked very closely and continue to work very closely with a national nonprofit called American Forests. And they were shifting to look at urban forestry under their leadership there. And we were sort of in conversation at the time. This is Black Lives Matter movement. A lot of stuff is happening. Um, Thinking about the issue, and I didn't have the words. It's literally two words, tree
Mhm.
equity. But
Yeah.
they not only sort of pushed and talked about and made a term, but they actually problematized it in a series of maps called the tree equity score. and you can go and you can explore your neighborhood, and
Mm.
it's been a really powerful tool to just it resonates with people. People, the moment you say it, people get it, right? There's not, you don't have to explain a lot behind it.
I actually first found out about Tree Boston with your association of a current art exhibition that's at two locations at City Hall and Hall Space in Dorchester, Learning with Trees, Artists and Ecologies of Connection, which we've been fortunate to feature in another series I do. Could you share a little bit about your collaboration with curator Martina Tanga and the artist involved in the exhibition?
Yeah, Martina's been such a joy to work with. I can't remember how her name came across my inbox, but somehow, like, someone forwarded something to me, and I sent her an email, and she was living in Italy in the time. It just completed a show of New England artists and trees in Rome.
Mm.
And we got to talking, and she's an amazing person. She's worked at the Museum of Fine Arts, and she wanted to do a show like this in Boston. And we just would talk every couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden, like, I turn around and hear this show. So really kudos to her. It's been a pleasure to work with her, get to know the artists. We're hoping to do some programming this summer, community programming, youth programming, using the space and the surrounding. There's a little park in front of the hall space to engage communities and playing with, touching, feeling, thinking about trees in new creative ways. And the exhibit really showcases a lot of that. There's fabric dyed with trees. There's moldings. There's a moving, right. There's all this beautiful, really provocative art. I encourage people to go visit both exhibits.
No, it seems to align so well with Tree Boston's mission that trees as teachers,
Yeah.
collaborators, rather than just something part of the landscape.
Yeah. And I always tell this to people. I think that sense of kinship with trees, I think, is actually built in our DNA. And what I
Mm.
mean by that is we come from a evolution or from a heritage of primates that continue to spend, we're the only primates that don't, continue to spend a majority of their life living in trees.
Hmm.
Trees are providing them food and shelter. They're providing them safety from predators. There's a whole bunch of reasons why we love trees so much. They calm our nerves. They're our home, and we have a lot to learn from them. And this is an example of a reconceptualization of trees not as objects of capitalism, but of our objects of awe and place.
Why do you think art can be such a powerful way to deepen people's appreciation for the natural world?
I think art is just a way for us to reimagine, right? It allows us the freedom, and it challenges us um, to think about things differently. And the art in these exhibits can sometimes be playful, right? And sort of you laugh about it, and you think about things differently. It can sometimes be challenging or disorienting. It can sometimes be just beautiful. And I
Mm.
think each of those things is a cause for a little bit of discomfort and a little bit of like provocation and giving us the space to examine things and think about things differently and connect with trees differently and understand them differently. And it's just one way, I think, of experiencing and thinking about trees, but a really important way.
Do you see the arts becoming a bigger part of Tree Boston's future?
Uh, I would love that. I mean, I think there's so much that we could continue to do with that with Martina or with others. And there's so many talented artists in Boston. I've met so many. It's always a question of capacity, right? It's always a question of funding and staff. I think there's huge opportunity. Um, and this opportunity with Martina came along and was sort of organic, and we've worked a lot with her and invested our time in it, but she really ran the show. Um, and I hope people step up and continue to sort of see the value in this and help support us to continue doing this type of work.
Building on that, if the exhibition inspires people to look differently at, say, the tree outside their own home, what would you hope they do next?
I hope they share that. I hope that they share that story somehow with their neighbors or with us. You can actually find, we have on our website at treeboston.org, we have a section called Tree Stories, and people can see other people's stories. They
Oh,
can also submit their own stories. And once you're in that website, like there's a whole world of things that ways that you can sort of engage and think about trees. It's anything from our programming, but we also have links to other resources people can have. So if you live in Boston, right, and you want to get a tree planted in front of your home, the city will do it for you as long as you request it. So you have to dial 311, right? The same thing in a lot of other cities across the Commonwealth. But I think there's lots of things people could do. They could talk to their state rep. There's a bill right now pending, the mass saves, not the mass saves, sorry, the mass bond bill, the environmental bond bill that has a large line of funding for trees and tree planting. Um, so I hope that people are able to lean in on this moment where trees, I think, are having their moment, and support not only our work, but I know there are groups all across the region that are doing this kind of work. Find your local group and get involved.
no, and as just from reading the popular press, not only the benefits of being outside, enjoying trees and nature for health, mental health, so many benefits that for many of us are just coming to light
Yeah.
and have been there, as you say, for ever for many other species besides ourselves. What are some of the challenges you see facing Boston's urban forest over the next decade?
Um, I think climate change is probably the biggest challenge. Well, I shouldn't say the biggest, it's one of the biggest ones. And what I mean by that is not so much the increase in temperature, but it's the changes in weather patterns. And we saw it
Mm,
last week. We saw the hot 3 or 4 days we had no rain. And then yesterday we had almost 2 inches of rain, right?
yeah.
And uh, that's challenging for a tree, right? It's fast and famine, and how do we make sure that a tree in the hot weather is getting the water it needs? Because the soil in an urban environment isn't built for retaining water the way it is in a natural environment, right? It's a lot of landfill, there's compact soil, there's stuff above, there's stuff underneath, there's concrete everywhere. So I think that's a huge challenge. I think the other challenge, and this is perennial, is development and how we ensure that any development, whether it's a private resident who wants to build a driveway or build a porch or whatever, to a large developer, actually takes a moment to think and see the tree and think, how can I work around this tree instead of through it? And that's not merely education, it's also policy.
Mm,
Because when we think about big trees that come down, those will never be replaced in my lifetime, right? You plant a small tree in its place, and you'll never receive that same sense of awe, those same benefits that you just mentioned. Um, and then I think the final challenge is, and again, I think this is sort of like an ongoing challenge, is how do you make sure that the city, the state, any municipality, local nonprofits have the resources, whether that's money or people or volunteers, to do the work and commit to that work. Because when we plant a tree, we commit to it, unfortunately, only for 2 years. Well, I would love if
mm,
we could commit to that tree for 20 years.
Mm.
People don't think about maintenance costs. People think about the planting cost. And if we're going to commit to this for our grandchildren, we have to think on that time scale. And trees force us to think on that time scale. We have to change in our conversation how we think about time.
Mm, well put, well put. Looking back since you first started getting involved with trees, getting a tree Boston off the ground, what are some of your thoughts and sort of reactions of where you began and where things are now and where you hope things go in the future?
Um, I look back and I am sometimes just like so humbled and amazed by how far we've come, right? I mean, in the day to day, I forget about that. But it is really so meaningful to me personally and professionally when I talk to people and the work resonates with them. Nothing is more meaningful to me when that happens, whether it's a city official or a private resident, right? And they could be coming at me for very different reasons. Um, I think I never imagined we'd have a staff of over 10 people, a
Mm.
summer program with 30. I mean, it's just so vibrant here in the office. Um, but I know that there's a lot of growth left. And when I look across the country, I see nonprofits in other cities that have been around for 20, 30 years who are doing similar work, and they have a staff of 40, 50, 60
Mm.
people. And I
Wow.
think there is that not only opportunity, but need in the city of Boston to carry that forward. Not for me. I'm not going to be here. I want this organization to be able to, to grow on its own, so to speak. But I think the vision needs to be around like an organization that has the capacity to do the work um, season in and season out, whether it's hot, whether it's rainy, whether it's cold. We just bought our second truck. I can see us like having four or five more, right? Like
Mm.
all these issues, but like that's really like starts to get complicated and you build these systems or you build this idea and then you need systems to support it. So I think for me in the next couple of years, as unsexy as it sounds, it's about building those systems, right? Ensuring that the systems are in place that can support the ongoing growth.
In closing, David, can you remind viewers and others who are interested, motivated now to become involved with Tree Boston, how they can go about that?
Well, the easiest way is to just visit our website, treeboston.org. But you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, all those other social media things, LinkedIn. Just Google Tree Boston and you'll find us. I invite people to, go to our website, see the work we do, give us a call if you want to get a tour. Happy to show you around, to meet our teams. They're working through August.
Nice.
Very, very proud of the work we do here and would be honored to share it with your audience.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we'll be sure to put some of those contact links in our closing credits. But unfortunately, for now, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank you again so much for taking the time to be here. So informative. Lots for all of us to get involved with and do. And in closing, just want to wish you continued success with future endeavors.
Thank you for the time.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.